What happens when two Hollywood icons collide so fiercely on live television that the host is forced to halt the show? Today, we're breaking down the shocking on-air clash between Whoopi Goldberg and Morgan Freeman, an encounter that stunned viewers and sent producers into panic mode. This wasn't a routine celebrity disagreement. It was an intense verbal showdown that laid bare long, simmering tensions within Hollywood itself. Be sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment, because the way this moment unfolds is almost unbelievable. The morning began like any other at the View studios. Whoopi Goldberg was seated at her usual spot at the moderator's desk, a hot cup of coffee beside her notes, as the crew made their final preparations. Morgan Freeman was scheduled to appear during the Hot Topics segment to promote his latest documentary exploring social justice in America. On paper, it seemed like a perfect pairing, one that was about to turn into must-see television for all the wrong reasons. "We're back in 30 seconds. The floor manager called out as Whoopi flipped through her index cards. She'd prepared what she believed would be a straightforward conversation about Freeman's new project. But during the commercial break, something about his demeanor caught her attention. He appeared unusually tense, his jaw clenched in a way she hadn't noticed before. The red light came on, and Whoopi slipped into her familiar professional smile. "Welcome back to The View. I'm here with the legendary Morgan Freeman, whose new documentary, Voices Unheard, takes a deep look at social justice movements across America." "Morgan, thank you for joining us." Freeman gave a brief nod, his intense gaze fixed on Whoopi in a way that made her subtly shift in her chair. "Thank you for having me, Whoopi," he said. "Though I have to admit, I'm curious about your perspective on some of the topics we'll be discussing today." There was something in his tone that immediately put Whoopi on alert. After decades in the industry, she'd developed an instinct for moments when a conversation was about to veer off course. "Well, that's why we're here, for meaningful dialogue," she replied. "Tell us about the documentary and what inspired you to take on this subject." Freeman leaned forward, his iconic voice carrying a gravity that seemed to fill the entire studio. "Before we talk about the documentary," he said, "I think we need to address something more urgent, the way certain media voices shape narratives without truly understanding the communities they claim to represent." Whoopi raised an eyebrow. This was not the direction she'd expected, but she stayed composed. "That's an interesting point, Morgan. Are you speaking generally, or are you referring to something specific about media representation?" "I'm talking about people," Freeman replied, never breaking eye contact, "who speak for communities they've never truly been part of. People who believe celebrity status gives them authority under struggles they only understand from the outside." The studio fell, silent except for the soft whir of the cameras. Whoopi felt her composure being tested as she realized the conversation was drifting into personal territory. "I think most people in media try to use their platforms responsibly," she said. "We have a responsibility to elevate important voices and stories." Freeman let out a short, dry laugh. "Amplifying voices is one thing," he said, "but there's a fine line between amplification and appropriation. Wouldn't you agree? Supporting a cause is different from becoming its face when you haven't lived that reality." Whoopi's fingers tightened around her coffee mug as the tension in the room became unmistakable. She could sense her co-hosts watching closely. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Morgan," she said carefully. "Could you be more specific?" "I'm saying that some people in this industry," Freeman continued, his tone sharpening, "have built entire careers discussing struggles they've witnessed, but never experienced, turning platforms meant for authentic voices into personal soapboxes." The accusation lingered heavily in the air. Whoopi felt her professional mask begin to crack as the personal nature of his words became clear. "Morgan, if you have something you want to address with me," she said firmly, "it would be more productive to say it directly instead of speaking in broad terms." Freeman smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. "Very well," he said. "Let's be direct. I'm referring to your commentary on issues affecting the African American community, particularly your recent remarks on generational trauma and systemic oppression. You speak with such certainty about experiences that, Frankly, your privileged position in Hollywood has insulated you from for decades. Whoopi's eyes flashed, but she fought to keep her composure. Privileged position, Morgan. She shot back. You're forgetting where I came from. I didn't grow up in Hollywood mansions. I know struggle very well. Do you? Freeman challenged calmly. Because from where I'm sitting, you've been so far removed from the real world for so long that your perspective has shifted. You talk about systemic oppression from the comfort of a penthouse, speaking for people whose daily reality you haven't shared in 30 years. The words landed like a punch. Whoopi felt her carefully controlled professionalism begin to fracture. That's an incredibly presumptuous thing to say, she replied sharply. You don't know anything about my personal history or my connection to these issues. I know this, Freeman fired back. You've grown comfortable speaking for communities you no longer live among. Your voice is so amplified that it drowns out the people who are actually enduring these struggles every single day. Whoopi's voice rose, her famous temper edging into view. So because I've been successful, I'm no longer allowed to speak about issues affecting my own community. Success suddenly erases my experiences and my right to advocate. Success doesn't erase your experiences, Freeman said, his tone hardening, but it does change your perspective, whether you admit it or not. And when you refuse to acknowledge that change, when you speak as if you're still living those hardships, you do a disservice to the people who actually are. The studio fell into complete silence. Even the camera operators seemed to stop breathing. Whoopi felt a surge of indignation threaten to overwhelm her training. I cannot believe you're questioning my authenticity, my right to speak about my own community. This is completely inappropriate, Morgan. Freeman leaned back, unmoved by her anger. What's inappropriate is using your platform to push narratives that serve your image more than the people you claim to represent. What's inappropriate is speaking with authority about realities you've been removed from for decades. Whoopi's hands began to shake as her composure finally cracked. You have absolutely no right to judge my connection to my community or the validity of my voice. No right whatsoever. Don't. Freeman cut in coolly. Because last I checked, questioning public voices is exactly what journalism is meant to do. Or have you forgotten that your role here is supposed to be more than celebrity commentary? Whoopi's face flushed, her professional mask fully gone. How dare you come on my show and lecture me about journalism? How dare you act like you hold some moral authority over me? Your show? Freeman repeated, raising an eyebrow. Interesting choice of words. I thought this was meant to be a platform for diverse voices, not Whoopi Goldberg's personal echo chamber. The co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to step in. Joy Behar shifted uncomfortably while the others looked on with growing concern. But Whoopi was past caring. You know what, Morgan? This interview is over, she declared, reaching for her earpiece. I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected by someone who clearly came in with an agenda. There it is, Freeman said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. The moment the facade drops, when challenged, you shut it down. Walk away. Silence the voice that dares to question you. Whoopi froze, her hand hovering midair. Excuse me. You heard me. Freeman pressed on. This reaction is exactly what I've been talking about. The moment anyone challenges your narrative, your authority, your comfortable role as the so-called voice of the community, you shut it down, Freeman said coldly. You silence them, just as you've been silencing truly authentic voices for years. Whoopi's eyes burned with fury. I have never silenced anyone, she snapped. I've spent my entire career lifting people up, creating opportunities, fighting for representation. Your version of representation? Freeman fired back. Because there's a difference between making room for genuine voices and only amplifying voices that align with your personal brand of activism. My brand of activism? Whoopi's voice rose sharply, her temper fully unleashed. What exactly is wrong with my activism, Morgan? What have I done that's so unforgivable in your eyes? Freeman leaned forward again, his presence dominating the space between them. You've built a cult of personality around your opinions. You've positioned yourself as the final authority on issues that demand broader, more nuanced discussion. You've reduced complex social realities to Whoopi, Goldberg, talking points. That's absurd. Whoopi shot back, her voice echoing through the studio. I've never claimed to be the final word on anything. I share my views, just like everyone else at this table. Do you? Freeman challenged. Because from what I've seen, your opinions become the show's opinions. Your perspective dominates the conversation. When was the last time one of your co-hosts truly disagreed with you on a major issue? Whoopi glanced at her co-hosts, who now looked visibly uncomfortable. They disagree with me all the time, she insisted. We debate. We argue. We have different viewpoints. Freeman smiled, calculated, almost predatory. Disagreements over tactics, perhaps. Minor details. But fundamental challenges to your worldview, to your authority to speak on certain issues. I don't think so. You don't know what you're talking about? Whoopi said, though her voice carried less certainty now. You don't even watch this show. You don't understand our dynamic. I don't need to watch every episode to see the pattern. Freeman replied evenly. I can see it unfolding right now. You're more focused on defending your position than on considering whether my criticism has any truth to it. Whoopi clenched her fists on the table. Your criticism has no merit because it's based on assumptions. Not facts, is it? Freeman asked. Then let's talk facts. When was the last time you lived in a working-class neighborhood? When was the last time you worried about paying rent? When was the last time you lived the daily reality of the people you claim to represent? I don't have to prove my credentials to you. Whoopi snapped, her voice shaking with rage. I don't owe you, or anyone, an explanation of my background. Freeman nodded slowly. And that's the issue. You don't believe you need to examine your position, your privilege, your distance from the struggles you speak about so confidently. You assume your past gives you permanent authority over people whose present reality you no longer share. My past is part of who I am, Whoopi said firmly. It doesn't disappear because I've succeeded. It doesn't become invalid because my circumstances changed. No, Freeman agreed. It doesn't become invalid, but it does become outdated, less connected to today's struggles. And when you refuse to acknowledge that, when you refuse to step back and let current voices lead, you become part of the problem you claim to be fighting. Whoopi stood abruptly, her chair sliding backward. I cannot believe the audacity, she said, seething. I cannot believe you came on this show to personally attack me under the disguise of an intellectual discussion. Freeman remained seated, calm amid the storm. I came here to promote a documentary about authentic voices in social justice. The fact that this became personal says far more about you than it does about me. Don't you dare twist this around. Whoopi snapped, pointing directly at him. You came here with a script, talking points meant to provoke exactly this reaction. Freeman asked calmly. Or did I simply ask questions you're uncomfortable answering? Questions about accountability, about self-reflection, about the responsibility that comes with the platform you've built. Whoopi was breathing heavily now, anger radiating from her as the camera zoomed in on every nuance of her expression. You know your problem, Morgan. You think that because you've made a few documentaries and won a few awards, you're somehow more authentic than the rest of us. You think you're the guardian of moral purity. Freeman's expression darkened. My problem is watching people like you turn important social issues into career opportunities, while those who actually live these struggles are pushed further into the background. Career opportunities. Whoopi's voice cracked with indignation. You think I've built my career on exploitation? That everything I've done is for personal gain? I think you've lost sight of the line between advocacy and self-promotion. Freeman replied coldly. You're so used to being the center of attention that you can't imagine stepping aside for more relevant voices. The studio was silent, tension crackling in the air as Whoopi stared at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Producers frantically debated cutting to commercial, but the confrontation was too gripping to interrupt. Finally, Whoopi broke the silence, her voice low and dangerous. You want to talk about stepping aside, about making room for other voices. Maybe you should start with yourself and stop using your platform to tear down people who are actually trying to make a difference. Freeman's eyes glimmered with something like amusement. The difference between us, Whoopi, is I'm not afraid to examine my own motivations. I'm not afraid to question whether my voice should be heard on every issue. And I am. Whoopi's voice rose again, control slipping further. You think I don't question myself. You think I don't wrestle with these issues. I think you wrestle with criticism, Freeman said. I think you wrestle with challenges to your authority. But genuine self-reflection, genuine examination of whether your voice sometimes does more harm than good. I see no evidence of that. Whoopi's face contorted with rage. You don't see it, because you refuse to. You came here determined to paint me as a fraudulent activist, and nothing I say will change your mind. Try me, Freeman said simply. Give me one example of when you stepped back from an issue, because your voice wasn't the most important one in the room. The challenge hung in the air. Whoopi opened her mouth, then closed it, searching for an answer that met his impossible standard. I thought so, Freeman said after the silence stretched too long. You can't think of one, because it never occurred to you that your voice might not be the most important. That's not fair. Whoopi protested, though her voice lacked conviction. That's an impossible standard. You're asking me to prove a negative. I'm asking you to show humility, Freeman corrected, to demonstrate you understand the difference between having a platform and deserving one. Those words hit like a punch. Whoopi staggered slightly, her face cycling through anger, hurt, confusion, and perhaps reluctant recognition. How dare you question whether I deserve my platform? She whispered, trembling. How dare you suggest everything I've built, everything I've worked for, everything I've accomplished is illegitimate? Freeman's expression softened slightly, voice still firm. I'm not questioning your accomplishments. Whoopi, I'm questioning whether those accomplishments give you the right to speak for people whose struggles you no longer share. Those struggles will always be part of me. Whoopi said, tears visible now. You can't take that away. You can't erase where I came from. No one's trying to erase your history, Freeman replied. But history is history. It's not a license to speak for people's present reality. Whoopi wiped her eyes angrily, smearing her makeup. So what are you saying? That I should just shut up? That I should stop advocating for causes I care about because I've been successful? I'm saying you should listen more than you speak, Freeman said. I'm saying you should amplify current voices instead of competing with them. I'm saying you need to recognize that your perspective, valuable as it may be, isn't necessarily the most relevant one anymore. The words seemed to drain all the fight out of Whoopi. She stood swaying slightly, looking older, more fragile than anyone had ever seen her on television. You know what? She whispered finally. I can't do this anymore. I can't sit here and be attacked like this on my own show. She turned to face the cameras, tear-streaked and raw. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but we need to stop the show. This has gone too far. Freeman leaned back, expression unreadable. Running away again, Whoopi. Silencing the conversation the moment it gets uncomfortable. Whoopi spun toward him, composure shattered. I'm not running away. I'm protecting this show, and our audience, from your deliberate attempt to humiliate me on live television. The truth isn't humiliation, Freeman said calmly. Your version of the truth, Whoopi shot back. Your biased, predetermined version of who I am and what I represent. Freeman stood slowly, casting a shadow over the desk. My version is based on observation, patterns of behavior, the gap between your words and actions. What's yours based on? Whoopi's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, crushed under the weight of the confrontation. This is exactly what I mean, Freeman continued, softer now but no less pointed. When challenged to examine yourself, to look honestly at your motivations and methods, you shut down. You retreat into anger and victimhood instead of engaging with the criticism. I'm not a victim. Whoopi managed, her voice weak. No, you're not, Freeman agreed. You're a powerful media figure with enormous influence. That's why these questions matter. That's why you should be able to answer them. Whoopi looked around the studio, taking in her co-host's shocked faces, the frozen camera operators, the producers watching from the control room. Everyone was waiting to see what she would do next. Cut to commercial, she said suddenly, her voice finding strength again. Cut to commercial now. Joy Behar tentatively suggested maybe we should. I said cut to commercial now. Whoopi repeated, louder this time. Freeman watched, calm as ever. Even now, you're trying to control the narrative. Even now, you're trying to silence the uncomfortable conversation. Whoopi turned to him one last time, eyes blazing with a mix of hurt and rage. You came here to destroy me, Morgan. You came with a plan to tear me down in front of my audience, and you've succeeded. I hope you're proud of yourself. Freeman remained steady. I came here to have a conversation about authenticity and accountability. The fact that you experienced it as destruction says everything about your relationship with criticism. Get out, Whoopi whispered, voice breaking. Just get out of my studio. Freeman nodded slowly, composing himself as he walked toward the exit. This is exactly the conversation we should be having in Hollywood, Whoopi. The fact that you can't handle it proves how necessary it is. He left the studio, leaving Whoopi alone at the desk, tears streaming as the cameras rolled. The room remained in stunned silence, the weight of the confrontation settling over everyone like a heavy blanket. What did you think of this explosive showdown? Did Morgan Freeman have a point about media authenticity, or did he go too far in his criticism of Whoopi? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more behind the scenes Hollywood drama you won't see anywhere else.